EST, we hit Diamond 1, as you can see there. We woke up early this morning and were able to get in a couple of matches after we went back down from Diamond 2 to Diamond 3. We were able to grind back up into Diamond 2. And then after we came home from running some errands, we were able to grind our way back up to D1 quite efficiently. Overall, I think there was 7 losses here and 13 wins. So, you know, a decent enough win rate. And the deck we were using was, of course, FLOOWANDEREEZE. So I'm just going to go over this in a little bit of detail here for you, because I know some people have been wondering, has the deck changed? And yes, it has. You are not really running into like 75% tier limit, I would say. It's definitely been scaled back. I've definitely run into like a lot of Exosister and other kind of, I don't want to call them rogue decks, but like Exosister or very specific like decks to counter tier. Like there was one really interesting stun deck that I ran into that I think auto loses to FLOOWANDEREEZE because they put up like anti-special summoning stuff and we don't care about any of that. Anyways, the deck list is down to 1 DD Crow now. 2, you know, in theory, it makes sense because you do technically want to open this if you can. It's a hand trap, but it's not the greatest hand trap, honestly, and it's really not enough to stop a good tier limit hand. You need to really use this in like reaction to like a critical play in order for it to have impact, and you're really just slowing down tier limit. You're not stopping them from putting up an insane end board. Like for example, you might just be slowing down one of their critical fusion summons like Kaleido Heart, which is in and of itself super important. But, you know, they're still going to end on a board, and then they're still going to play during your turn, mill during your turn, and they're going to get the Kaleido Heart out anyways, most likely. So just having one, making it searchable when you know you can kind of stake and keep control of the match is more impactful. And I subbed this out for a gold Sarcophagus, which the reason you do this is to increase consistency. Because if you were thinking like, or my thinking before was like, well, 2 Crow is good because I can still banish it with Advent. But that requires 2 cards, right? And, you know, if you brick on 2 crows or you draw into a crow and you're like, oh my god, I can't do anything with this in your opening hand, then it's a dead card. And then even against some other decks that aren't tier, like I mentioned, if you're not running into tier so much, DD Crow might not be very useful, like other FLOOWANDEREEZE decks or stun decks that don't care about DD Crow, right? Labyrinth was another one that you would run into, and Exosister, right? So Gold Sarcophagus was actually amazing because it's a consistency card. If you open with like Stree and no other bird, but you have Gold Sark, you can Gold Sark into a Robina, you can summon Stree, banish the Gold Sark, and get Robina to hand. Now you can play, right? So, and same with Toucan, right? If you open Toucan and no other birds, you can Gold Sark into a Robina and play from there. So it's like another starter. I would say that this card is a staple. Like, I can't really believe I was playing without it before. So I would definitely be playing that. The rest of the list is pretty standard. 3 Robina, 3 Eaglin. The 2 Stree is questionable. The 2 Toucan is maybe questionable, but a little bit more reasonable. The reason why Stree isn't so good is because the Grave Shufflers. If you summon Stree, you need to be able to actually target and banish the card in order to resolve its effect, which means that in order to continue summoning, the Stree's banish effect has to actually happen. So if you summon Stree, you target a card, and then the opponent chains like Mudora or Keldo to shuffle that card back into the deck, Stree doesn't resolve, and therefore you can't summon off Stree's effect. So you just lose your summon, right? And that can be very detrimental if you're like trying to summon off of Dreaming Town during the opponent's turn. You summon Stree and then you can't extend anymore. Now your turn is over, basically. Well, your turn is over. You playing during your opponent's turn is over because you can't extend further and get your tribute monster out at that point. This is good to force out a shuffler, and in matchups where you're not playing against shufflers, this is also very good as well. So 2 again is to help to increase consistency. You do need to banish some of your cards from the graveyard, like your M-Pins and stuff like that, if they're not banished already, in order to recycle them with Toucan. And like I said, forcing out the Shuffler to maybe shuffle back your M-Pin into the deck if it was milled into the graveyard or you tributed it into the graveyard will help you search for it again with the Eaglin later on. So there's some weird scenarios where Stree can be useful, and you can definitely cut this down to 1 and probably play something more impactful, but I just found the 2 is what I was used to, and that's what worked for me. The Toucan at 2, again, just another copy of a bird so that you can help hopefully get some birds in your hand for the Gold Sark or the Terraforming or the map or the Advent, just to continue to play. Also to recycle off of Unexplored Wins. You can put them back and draw more cards, right? So, having a higher bird ratio for me right now is what worked. Toucan definitely has more utility because, it can recur the FLOOWANDEREEZE cards from the banished pile, so it's definitely very good for that. But yeah, overall, the 2 Stree and the 2 Toucan, you can make your decision on whether or not you want to play 2. The 2D shifter is mandatory, so if you're going to play this deck, this is an ultra rare card that's not a part of the engine, but obviously because we are in a tier 0 format with Tearlament, you definitely need to play Dimension Shifter right now. This was actually cut from the deck during the Sprite format. Like before Tier was released, I wasn't playing Dimension Shifter because it wasn't needed. And my deck was like really consistent. Like if you were watching my previous videos where I was putting up like 90% win rates in like Platinum and Diamond, it was absolutely crazy. But after Tearlament, yeah, you need D-Shifter. You also need an Apex Avian. This is another ultra rare, so some people say you can cut this card, but if you look at any topping Flunder list, they're all playing Apex Avian. The option for Omni Negate is just too powerful. It forces out your opponent's card, they try to bait it out, they extend a lot of extra resources to out the Apex, and you just negate and return it to hand to keep it safe. So it's very good for that, you need to play it. And just one Ryza, I've seen some lists with 2, but this card actually isn't that impactful, and you're using this card a lot less in the meta. So, you know, you can even make a case to cut it really, but I would probably just keep 1 just in case. And then 2 Empin, you can also make a case for 3 if you don't want to play the Mega Monarch. The problem is, because map is now limited, you are limited in the spells and traps that you can search. So, you know, you're going to run out of gas pretty quickly for your Empin. So 2 is still a good ratio. 1 Terraforming, it's a hit or miss if you want to play this or not, because this is technically a brick if you've already drawn into map or map gets milled. That actually happened to me where turn 1, the person milled my map in their first 5 mills off of Kelbeck, and then I drew Terraforming for turn. And I was like, if that's not a sign to scoop, I don't know what is. Because my hand wasn't really that good anyways, and the opponent had a really strong board turn 1. So, you know, you can play this. Some people have also opted to play Necro Valley, which is an ultra rare. You can play 1 copy of Necro Valley to also search off of Terraforming, but I don't think Necro Valley is necessarily needed. This card also negatively affects you in some degree. You can't banish with Stree. You can't target cards in the graveyard with Ryza, with Necro Valley. It affects maybe some other stuff as well, but those are the 2 main ones that come to mind. So it does slow your engine down as well, but this card does single-handedly beat Tearlament because they can't do anything in the graveyard. So, well, I shouldn't say single-handedly because, you know, they can still rank 4 Xyz and then Zeus and then out the board. So, you know, Zeus is a monster. So continuing on, well, yeah, the Gold Suck I already explained why that's good. 2 Pot of Duality, 3 Pot of Extravagance, and 1 Pot of Prosperity. So I also took out my Harpies Feather Duster, which was an ultra rare as well. I bricked on this card twice during my first Diamond 2 run, and it's what caused me to get demoted to Diamond 3. I drew it, and it was like 0 impact. It was a brick. And I was like, if this was like my 3rd Pot of Extravagance or something, I would probably have drawn into something that would have unbricked my hand or caused me to play through the opponent's board. Maybe, probably not, but maybe, right? So I just opted to say, like, I wasn't running into that much Labyrinth. I think I only ran into 1 actually, or any deck really that this would be effective against. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna cut it and put in the 3rd Extravagance. And so that's the other change from my first deck list. And this list right here got me back from D3, 5 wins to D2, 5 wins to D1, right? With that, whatever the 13 and 7 win rate is. What is that? I'm going to calculate it right now. Just give me 1 second. Let me pull up the calculator on the phone. 13 divided by 20, 65% win rate, which isn't bad for Diamond 2, right? Diamond 3, Diamond 2 into Diamond 1. 65% win rate, that means, you know, we're winning some of our going second matches, which is really tough to do in the upper Diamond ranks, I will say that. It's definitely not like early Diamond ranks or before Diamond. Anyways, continuing on, map at 1, unfortunately. I hope we get this card back to 2. You know, 1 isn't necessarily makes the deck, like, terrible, but this card gets outed, and just being able to have another card to search off for Empin or search it knowing that it's getting outed is really, really helpful. And, you know, when this gets outed, because of the state of the game right now, like, it goes to the graveyard. If you try to banish it with Stree, the opponent chains a Shuffler, puts it back into your deck, your Stree fizzles. I mean, it's good you have it back in your deck, you can search it out with Empin now, but it's just like, ugh, I have to wait another whole set of, like, rotation before I can get the map back on field. And the game is too fast for you to do that. So shuffling it back into your deck is enough to slow you down where you would lose the game, right? Because normally what you would do if map gets outed is you summon Stree, banish the map, summon Toucan, bring the map back to hand, activate map, and then use map again to continue extending. But with the Shuffler, it really sets you back a turn, which is really detrimental. So you have to kind of play knowing, like, without relying on map if you're in a complex game scenario where you and your opponent are going back and forth, it's very critical that you do not need to rely on map. You need to rely on Dreaming Town, and you need to rely on just your normal summon sequence, and chain blocking is very important. And again, if you watch my videos that are on the channel and the videos that I will post in my rank up to Diamond 1, you will see that, and I will try to explain it where I can of how you need to chain block in order to effectively stop your opponent from negating effects. Anyways, carrying on here, 3 D-Fissure. You can play 2, but I just, I'd rather see this card than not, because even when I brick, if I see this card, I put it on the field. If they don't have the Heartbeat, this will single-handedly stop tier. Like, there was one opponent who actually tried to just go beating over me with just like normal summon Kelbeck, normal summon Rhino, no effects, and just beating over me with 1500 monsters because I had no birds. But then the second you draw into a bird, you go full combo, right? If they don't have the Imperm or Solic, you go full combo and you win the game because they can't do anything with Fissure up. So this card was kind of like the, what was that card? Dyna? Fossil Dyna? That I was playing before Tearlament drop, where this would stop like Sprite from special summoning and all those other decks. This card kind of fills that gap where you play this and it stops Tearlament from kind of extending. It doesn't stop them from normal summoning and playing their cards that way, or they can still special summon and just choose not to mill, but it really makes it difficult, obviously, for them to extend their plays and whatnot. So yeah, this card is a floodgate for the deck. Banish everything. Unfortunately, it is pretty much a brick against everything else you will face in Diamond, because Exosister also plays this and doesn't care about it. Labyrinth plays it and doesn't care about it. The Stun deck plays it and doesn't care about it. Like, everything else plays this card. So the D-Shifter and the Dimensional Fissure are actually bricks when you go up against those decks, which is, like I said, probably around 50% now at this point, not so much 70 like you were seeing at the start when tier dropped. Going on to the next card here, Unexplored Wins. You definitely want to play 2. This is good to open with. It's good to search because if one gets outed, it is an extremely powerful card. It's how you deal with back row decks. Because this card does say send monsters you control and one card your opponent controls, you're sending them. So it will trigger tier names. That being said, if you have this card up with D-Fissure, whatever you send will not trigger the effect because it gets banished, obviously, right, in terms of monsters. So it is very good for that in combination. But you can also unbrick your hand by putting the birds back and drawing cards. And then, when you've gone through all your tributes, I think there was one game I opened up like Ryza, Apex, and Empin, but I opened up like Robina along with it. And I think I had like either hard drawn trap or hard drawn map or something. And I was able to search out the Unexplored Wins and activate it and unbrick my hand by putting the tribute monsters back in, which made my Eagle live. And it helped me in the grind game. So this card can be very important to unbrick your hand and just recycle your resources to keep your birds alive. And it makes it so that you can grind out with your grind game can actually keep up with Tearlaments for a certain amount of time. Because obviously Tearlament, it's infinite basically, right? Because they're constantly putting their cards back into their deck, milling them, resummoning, putting things back into extra deck, summoning it back out, etc. Using shufflers to put back their link monsters and whatnot. So they have a very, very strong grind game. But for you, all you need is one of those banishing cards up. Now they can't really recycle. They can't even trigger their effects. And then your grind game outgrinds Tearlament's grind game. I hope that makes sense. But that's how important this card can be in your engine. And you definitely want to play 2. One gets outed. You don't want to try struggling, banishing it with Stree, bringing it back with Tukun, because like I said, they're just going to shuffle it back into your deck. You just want to be able to search out the second one when you need it. And that was the same case you make for map. So this card is super important. You definitely want at least 2. I don't think you want 3 because then you run the risk of drawing multiples, and then it's really bad because obviously you only need 1 copy. But either hard drawing it so you don't have to search it with Empin, or drawing into map or Dreaming Town maybe, and then having to be able to search this is very helpful as well. 2 Book of Moon. There's a case to be made. You can run Book of Eclipse. Book of Eclipse is a super rare, but I think Book of Moon has its uses. I don't like booking my own cards. The one thing I will say in an interaction you do have to be very aware of is if you book your Robina, either with Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse, or any of your small birds, and maybe you're trying to save it from an Imperm or something, which is fair, is what you should do. When you tribute over that bird, if it's still face down, it will not get banished, it will go to graveyard, which means it's out of rotation. So you have to either make sure it's flipped back face up, or you have to have D-Fissure on the field. Having D-Fissure on the field means that even if the bird is face down, when it gets tributed, it will go to the banish pile. That actually lost me a game because I forgot about that interaction. I did not have D-Fissure up. I thought I had the game and I got cocky. I Book of Moon the opponent's Imperm, on my Robina, and then I tributed over it when I didn't have to tribute over it, and I was stupid, and it went to graveyard, and I couldn't extend further because I didn't have a Robina to get my other birds to hand, and the opponent beat me because of that stupid misplay. All I had to do was not tribute over the Robina, tribute over something. Yeah, I think I had like Toucan and Eaglin, and then I couldn't extend with the Toucan, obviously, because I didn't have Robina in rotation. So those being my only two birds later on in the turns with like Dreaming Town set, I couldn't extend enough because my Robina was not in rotation. So keep that in mind. It's very important. But Book of Moon is extremely good in outing Baguska and outing Dragostapelia that the Tearlament board puts up when they know you're playing Floowandereeze. It can also help out and force out the effects of fellow Floowandereeze mirror match players, booking down the Apex Avian, forcing the negate there. It can help get the Exosister monsters booked, which would prevent them from Xyz summoning with like Returnia or Armament or whatever other spells that they might play. Whatever the quick play spell is. I don't think it's Armament, but whatever it is. So Book of Moon is definitely good. There's been topping lists that play 3 of these, and there is a case to be made to play 3. So it is a very good card for those reasons, for those interactions. Advent, I shouldn't have to explain this. This is like your consistency card. Banish a bird, search for map. Banish a bird, search for Robina. Search for whatever you need to unbrick your hand. This card is a godsend for this deck. You know what? If Konami gives Floowandereeze another like small bird or another consistency card, the deck might actually come back to be like top tier. It is really resilient. I really do like this deck. And then finally, evenly matched for when you go second. This card, you know, when it resolves, it can be pretty good. I found it to be a little underwhelming though, but it's definitely worth playing because even if it goes 2 for 1 or 1 for 1, it usually puts the opponent in a difficult position because whatever they did commit to the board is usually important enough that you want to get it off the board. And because of the way Floowandereeze works, you can still extend in main phase 2 and use Dreaming Town to play during their turn. So losing your battle phase isn't always the most detrimental if you can put them down to 1 card left on their field, which is what evenly matched does. Again, if you watch my videos, you've seen how effective this card can be. And just having it is kind of like a comforting feeling, knowing that, okay, even if my board gets outed, even if I like go first and I have it, I've got the evenly match. And I think there was a couple games where, you know, I went first, my opponent still outed my board, but I was able to evenly and get back into the game and come back and win it. So definitely a card that I would stick to 3 of. It is very powerful, this format. I know some people don't like it, but it's just one of those cards that I think you need to play because when it does come in to play, like it wins you the game literally, or it gets you back into the game. So it's really important. And then just 1 Dreaming Town. You can play 2. I've seen other mirror matches that I faced up, people playing 2, and it actually won them the game because they played 2. But I'm just opting for 1 because I don't have the room for the second. I guess you could cut Stree for a second one if you want. That might be an option. But 1 was just fine for me. I never really found myself needing to recycle this too much because if I was able to resolve Dreaming Town, I was usually winning the game and my opponent would scoop anyways. I wouldn't need to recycle this and play again during my opponent's turn because either I put them on so little resources during my first turn, their turn, and then back on my turn, that there's not going to be a 4th turn. And if there was a 4th turn, I'm usually not winning anyways because I haven't done enough to deal with the opponent's board. So that is the deck. The extra deck doesn't really matter. I never summoned anything from the extra deck at all throughout my entire climb from like, I think I started in bronze literally because yeah, what was my rank before this? Yeah, so last season I got to silver 1, which would have reset me to bronze this season. I ranked up from bronze all the way up to diamond 1. And I never summoned from my extra deck once. So, yeah, and I can prove it to you because I did play a deck other than Floowandereeze, I think in Platinum. And these missions have been sitting in my missions for like the longest time. I've never Xyzed and I've never Pendulum. Or Link Summon, for example. I did Xyz summon 1 time with like another deck. Just fooling around. And obviously I never special summoned either because Floowandereeze doesn't special summon. So there's proof that I literally have not used my extra deck at all. So if you're wondering about that and thinking like, oh, I can't build this deck because look at all those ultra rares in the extra deck, you don't need the extra deck, trust me. If you want the comforting feeling of being safe, I would say make a Fucho, make an Assembled Nightingale, make a Downard, and make a Zeus. Those are probably the most impactful cards that you'll run into. The other things, this card, you know, you 2 level 1 monsters, you could out some back row, not really super useful. Lingaribo, you know, if you get Ibleed, you're not really going to out the Iblee anyways. You just use it as tribute fodder because you don't special summon anyways. And no one's playing Iblee, so it doesn't matter. Nightmare Cerberus, never really needed to out a Baguska this way because, again, I had the Book of Moon, and I just didn't have the materials to make a Cerberus. So either the Baguska beat me, or I just Book of Mooned it and still won, played around it, right? Because map is at 1, it's really hard for you to get 2 materials on the field without triggering a bird effect so that you can use your extra deck, and that's how you out Baguska, is you use map, you summon 1 monster off map, no effects activated, you normal summon 1 monster from your hand, so you have to have 2 birds and map in order to make this work, right? And then you link those off because you never activated a bird effect to summon Cerberus, and then you discard a card and out the Baguska. That's a lot of resources to commit to out a Baguska, because remember, your 2 birds that are linked off are now going to the banished pile. You need to have a 3rd bird in order to get those birds back from the banished pile. So it's really hard to do, especially with just 1 map. So you're rarely using these cards anyways. And then this card, Firefighting Darumadal, is just like target one of your spell and traps, target one of the ones the opponent controls, outs it. No one's really playing Floodgates other than Soul Drain, which does beat this deck. But other than that, you know, the Floodgates are all limited, so you're not really running into that too much unless you're playing against Labyrinth or Stun. Codebreaker, same thing, 2 effect monsters. Same concept as Cerberus. The only thing is you need your battle phase in order to beat over the Baguska, because this is 2300 defense, and that beats over Baguska in defense mode, which is, I think, 21 or 21? 2000 or 21? Yeah, it's 2000 defense, so this beats over Baguska. Yeah, Farragut is just fodder, never summon Black Luster Soldier. I mean, technically, you know, you use an M-Pin and like 2 small birds. You bring this out, it's summoned with a level 7 or higher monster, so it gets the cannot be destroyed and cannot be targeted, I believe, effects. So it could be good. Smorg, you're not going to special summon stuff with it anyways. I mean, maybe Apex, I guess, but that's about it. Access Code never made it, and Shureg never made it. One thing that you might want to play as well, if you can afford it, I don't have one made yet, is Underworld Goddess. So the thing with this is if you run into a big Towers monster that you can't out, let's say like an Avermax or something, you can just tribute over the Avermax with the Unexplored Wins, I'm pretty sure. I never had to do it, but I'm pretty sure you can. But during your opponent's turn, you activate Dreaming Town, you summon all 4 of your birds, hopefully they don't beat over anything, and then during your turn, you sack all 4 of your birds and the opponent's like Avermax or something, and you bring out Underworld Goddess, and you out whatever Towers monster they have. But it does require you to have your 4 normal summon birds on field at the same time, basically, in order to get to this play. So yeah, that is the deck list. I know this video is probably a little long, but hopefully this in-depth deck list was helpful for you to explain some of the scenarios and why you would do some deck choices, or why I made some of the deck choices, and how those choices impact the actual meta and interact with certain decks and certain cards. So again, you know, D1, the videos are coming soon, or the video is coming soon with the matches in it. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and drop a like on it. It would help. Thank you for watching. Quantum is out.